Want to know what's going on in our community? Thanks for joining us on Consider the Source, where we will highlight the biggest stories from this week and hear more from our reporters bringing you the coverage. Remember, the Source is online all the time, and you can find us at stthomassource.com, stcroixsource.com, and stjohnsource.com. I'm your host, Adisha Penn. And this week with the news, we are excited to welcome Antonio Emanuel, Executive Director of the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, as our featured guest to tell us more about the strategies his agency is developing to make a dent in crime across the territory. But first, let's get to the headlines. Governor Albert Bryan Jr. has ordered all flags to be flown at half-staff for 30 days as the territory mourns the passing of former Governor Charles Turnbull. Turnbull, 87, died on July 3rd in Washington, D.C., where he had lived for the past year, surrounded by family, friends said. Tributes poured in from across the territory and abroad as the governor was remembered as a statesman and an intellect with a love for Caribbean culture and history. Turnbull, who was first elected in 1999 and served 2 full terms as governor, contributed to the territory in many roles during his career, including as a teacher, public schools administrator, and education commissioner, in addition to the work on many boards. The 29th legislature awarded Turnbull with the VI Medal of Honor for his contributions both within the territory and abroad. As further proof that the territory is returning to some semblance of normal following 2 years of pandemic restrictions, the annual Bastille Day Kingfish Tournament is back at Hull Bay on St. Thomas today, Sunday, July 10th, for the first time since 2019. Anglers of all ages and abilities are vying for the top prize at the tournament that has been hosted by the Northside Sports Fishing Club since 1988 in celebration of the island's French heritage. The winning catch will take the $3,000 top prize, but even if you don't hook the big one, there are more than a dozen other ways to win with thousands of dollars in cash and prizes, organizers said. The event benefits the Joseph Sibley School, St. Thomas Rescue, Civil Air Patrol, and Nana Baby Children's Home, as well as provides college scholarships. Over the past nearly 3 decades, the nonprofit Northside Sports Fishing Club, by way of its annual Bastille Day Kingfish Tournament, has donated more than $210,000 to community organizations. Check the Source on Monday for more coverage. Police are investigating 2 homicides, one on St. Croix on Wednesday and one on St. Thomas on June 30th, bringing the death toll from gun violence in the territory to 17 since the start of 2022. On Wednesday, 911 received a call of shots fired and a man down in Williams Delight on St. Croix. The victim was taken to the hospital in a private vehicle, and once at the hospital, he died of his injuries, the VI Police Department reported. He was identified by his next of kin as 28-year-old Jamali Christopher Alfred of Williams Delight. On Sunday, a teenager was shot on the night of June 30th in Sugar Estate on St. Thomas and died of his injuries, the VI Police Department reported. Janae Barry, 17, suffered multiple gunshot wounds and was being treated at Schneider Regional Medical Center, police said. A second victim suffered a leg wound, the report stated. Police asked that anyone with information about these crimes call 911 or 340-774-2211, Crime Stoppers VI at 1-800-222-8477, or the Major Crime Division at 340-642-8449. The St. John Festival wrapped up a full week of activities on Independence Day with the traditional July 4th parade that drew throngs of spectators, with ferries transporting visitors from St. Thomas and Tortola. A couple of cloudbursts caused a slowdown or two at the start, but rain didn't come close to stopping the celebration. Throughout the day, the mood was upbeat throughout Cruz Bay. We're back after 2 years and everybody's happy, said longtime resident Lisa Etre. For the first time since the pandemic began, residents and visitors alike enjoyed the festival village, named for St. John native Duran Jordan for his dedication to his community, and a food fair which honored Enid Dowey for her years of contribution to the event. The rededication of Freedom Statue in Emancipation Garden signaled last weekend an official change in the historical narrative of the park and the desire of a community to take control of its destiny. Speakers at Freedom Day events on St. Thomas said, on March 29th, the large copper bust of King Christian IX was removed from Emancipation Garden to make way for the conch shell blower, the original name for the statue that had been relegated to the periphery of the park since it was erected in 1998. Now called Freedom, the statue is meant to lay to rest the story that emancipation was granted to those enslaved in the Danish West Indies, and replace it with the truth that it was demanded and hard fought. Organized by the Pan-African Support Group, Sunday's event on St. Thomas also gave speakers the chance to reflect on the larger conversation of self-determination, which many acknowledge is a large step forward. On St. Croix, people gathered with family and friends at Budho and Vern Richards Veteran Parks in Frederiksted to enjoy the celebration of Emancipation Day with music, poetry, dancing, and good food. As part of the festivities, a reception on June 24th at Government House honored cultural bearers Asia Williams, Sidel Peterson Christopher, Wayne Bully Peterson, and Willard John. As the sun set on Emancipation Day, the tramp, people dancing down the streets with 10 sleepless nights, made its way to the waterfront to continue the festivities. We've got this clip from our St. Thomas celebration.
Marcus Garvey once said, "Liberate the minds of men, and you will liberate the bodies of men too." In that vein, it is important that we put this moment within the correct historical context. Today is important because this rededication marks an official shift in the historical narrative and the story that exists within and as a part of Emancipation Garden. For over 100 years, the dominant story in this park was of a king who kept the status quo within the Danish West Indies, slavery in all but name. Today, Virginanders have corrected that narrative of our liberation. On land that once held some of the world's largest slave auctions, Virginanders have chosen to center our own story of liberation, given to us through the sacrifice of our ancestors, as represented today by Freedom.
Moving on to our next story. This week, Bates Trucking, Marco Trucking, Just Right Trucking, and Gold Mine Trash Removal stopped hauling trash to the St. Croix landfill, saying the VI government is again far behind on payments. The territory faced a very similar situation in June of 2020 when the Bryan administration ended a territory-wide trash hauler strike after working out a deal for an immediate partial payment and a longer-term payment plan. James Bates of Bates Trucking said that the deal began well, but the government still owed old fees and was not current on the recent month's bills either. The Waste Management Authority has been given the power to collect tipping fees for using the territory's dumps as a way to mitigate the cost to the government. Those fees have been partially implemented. Tipping fees are in effect for all commercial or business solid waste haulers. The only exceptions at this time are for those solid waste haulers that are contracted directly with the Waste Management Authority to pick up from bins, homes, and convenience centers throughout the territory. Acting Education Commissioner Victor Sum III said this week that he looks forward to welcoming students and staff to the 2022-23 school year on August 8th, when public schools are scheduled to reopen. Before the start of each school year, officials from the VI Fire Service and Health Department are invited to conduct rigorous environmental and life and fire safety inspections of public school campuses. according to a press release from the Education Department. Some said the results of these annual reviews help determine maintenance priorities for the years. Some items from the most recent inspections have been completed, and architectural and engineering consultants have developed packages to address high priority areas of concerns. Annual environmental and life and safety inspections for the 2022-23 school year will begin in mid-July. In June, for the first time, the department conducted extensive safety and security inspections of schools with professionals from the fire service, VI Rescue, VI Police Department, and EMS to identify potential campus vulnerabilities in the event of an active threat, according to the department. This week's announcement follows a report by the VI Board of Education outlining areas of concern in the territory's public schools, many of them regarding maintenance of the facilities. In response, some said maintenance is ongoing to work with local and federal partners, along with consultants to build new schools and modernize existing ones. Welcome, Executive Director, and thank you for joining us here on Consider the Source. I know you've definitely had a busy week presenting your fiscal year to the Senate and an even busier few months. So let's start by getting a better understanding of what it is you and your office is tasked with doing.
Well, good evening, and I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for letting me come on your show and have an opportunity to share what the Office of Gun Violence Prevention does. The Office of Gun Violence Prevention is actually housed in the governor's office. Our mission is to do outreach and violence prevention in the territory, includes all the islands. Our mission is to influence at-risk individuals to choose to avoid violence as their way to settle disputes or fix their feelings of desperation. And we'll do this by engaging our community members through education, positive activities, and connecting people in need with the proper and appropriate resources. What I really want to get home is that the Office of Gun Violence Prevention is an outreach office. We are not a law enforcement office. We are looking at this as an epidemic, as a health and human services issue.
Mm-hmm. And I like that you said you're about educating. So educating people on good strategies on how to stay safe, the best ways to carry out certain activities. So that's really important. So I know you've, like you said, you're educating individuals. So you've assisted in developing your own strategies. I know you've had your own experience because you have a background in law enforcement. And I know you've also utilized other models and information from states and things such as the National Network for Safe Communities. So can you tell us a bit of your background, how your background has assisted you with developing models for the Virgin Islands? And what are some of those key points in the models that you use to assist individuals in the community?
Thank you. I'll sort of work backwards. Currently I'm the director of gun violence prevention. Before that, I was actually the curriculum coordinator for POST, which is Peace Officer Stayers in Training, where I did a lot of training for law enforcement and civilian community organizations in the territory. And then before that, I was the security director at Cruise and Rum and the superintendent of security at Havenza. And that's after I retired of being a police officer in Montgomery County, Maryland for 25 years. And while I was a police, I also did, I was a substitute teacher and a professor at University of Maryland. While I was a Montgomery County police officer, I did a lot of youth outreach programs and community outreach in our areas that we had in Silver Spring and Upper Silver Spring and Rockville and Gaithersburg. So I've had a lot of experience with outreach and dealing with communities that were plagued with crime and violence, which brings us to the National Network for Safe Communities. They're an organization a national organization that has gone into communities that were plagued with problems and used their engagement model as the outreach programs, and they've showed success. I mean, they have documented success. The Miracle in Boston, the Straight Safe Streets, Washington D.C., Baltimore, San Francisco, um, Oakland, Portland. So um, they have a proven track record, and they work out of John Jay University, which is a research based law enforcement uh, college, and so they've got a good backing, they've got a good reputation, and I'm excited about working with them. They just have a good program. Now, how that fits in here, and a lot of people are going to say, well, you do a program in the States or somewhere, it doesn't mean it's going to work here because we have a different culture, our thing is different. And the good thing about the programs that we're going to do and other options, I mean, I'm not just going to use that program or that outreach as the only way we're going to deal with violence in our territory. But that is the one of the strategies that we're going to employ. And what it consists of is building a team, a unified team to do outreach. And what one of the really important structures is the advisory council, where we utilize all the government agencies as well as private businesses, nonprofit organizations, faith-based organizations, um, to come together and come up with a wraparound service type project. I probably need to talk about my staff. We have 3 positions that are critical to the operation of my office, and those are the community engagement person, which basically will do a lot of marketing, public service announcements, activities, going to community events, doing speeches about nonviolence and anti-violence stuff. And then we have a survivor engagement specialist, which deals with families that have been traumatized by violence and assist them in dealing with their grief, or helping them be connected with proper resources to help them through the traumatic incident. And then one of the other important one is the violence interrupter, who actually engages folks that are at risk, either those that are suspected of being involved in criminal activity or victims of criminal activity, and trying to make sure that they don't make poor decisions after being involved in some criminal activity or event. So we're going to work very hard with other groups. Now, I have to say this too, because usually when I mention what we do, a lot of folks think that we're going to shut down other organizations that are doing stuff, and that's not the case at all. We accept all help, and whatever other organizations are doing out there, we want to let them continue. And if we can help supplement them, then that's what we want to do. There's plenty work. There's plenty availability to be involved in what we need to do. There's just a lot of work we need to do together. So that wraparound service is what's so important, because we want to make sure that we reach out to folks and guide them to the resources that they need that are going to help them get through these things. Because prevention is the key. We don't want to be after somebody gets shot, show up and deal with it. And we will do that. That's part of our job too. But it's more important to me and my staff if we can change somebody's mind or their mindset or the way that they think they're going to operate, and look at instead of feeling just desperate or frustrated, that they'll come up with a different way to handle it, and show some hope in their future.
Exactly. And thank you for sharing that, Mr. Emmanuel. That was definitely a mouthful. I like that you said we're about prevention, because that is what your office is about. And to my understanding, prevention is definitely better than a cure. And in a situation like this, when you have gun violence, you can't turn back the hands of time if someone is severely injured or if someone passes away as a result of gun violence. And like you mentioned, I think it's really important that you do work with local organizations because they have a direct hands-on approach as well with dealing with members in our local community. And that can help alleviate also like what you mentioned with some individuals thinking there might be a bit of a cultural barrier with some of the information you presented about your model. So with that being said, I want to ask, are there any successes you've had so far with the program?
I think so far we're still kind of getting the office on the rails. It's a slow process sometimes building an office from the ground up. I mean, I take it as a great opportunity that I've been given to create the office, um, but government moves slow here, and we have a lot of work to do. Um, but I think some of the successes are one of my favorite successes is the ability to be out in the community and meet the people that are doing the wonderful things. There are a ton of people on both districts in St. Croix and St. Thomas that are doing amazing things on their own at their own expense, at their own blood, sweat, and tears. I can't begin to tell you. And there's folks I haven't met yet. There's programs that are going on that I haven't been introduced to. There's just so much going on. I'm trying to get around to meet those folks that are doing things. So without trying to name folks, because if I start naming and forget somebody, I'll hurt somebody's feelings. So I want to be careful about that. But I do want to say thank you to those folks that have been long before this office was created doing stuff in their communities because they saw a need. And like I said, we're here to help supplement those things, not take anything away from them or move them away or change what they do. We want them to keep on doing what they're doing. I had an opportunity to speak. I go to the high schools and I talk to some young people in St. Thomas a couple of weeks ago, and I got to meet some amazing young people that gave me food for thought. I mean, we had courageous conversations about gun violence, and people don't like people from west and east, and the things going on between the different neighborhoods, and they had really strong opinions about how this is supposed to work. And I applauded that because I want to hear those kind of things from our folks in the community, because they're the ones that are going to give me the information I need and to give us the diagram for how we're going to respond. So those are the main successes. Um, I had an opportunity to do a lot of training. I do training with government agencies and private industries about anti-work violence prevention, um, active shooter prevention, active shooter response, de-escalation, customer service. So having been around the community and doing that kind of training, it certainly puts me being able to meet a lot of different people and have good conversations with folks that see the need for the training, that see the need for us to try to change our communities and the temperature. So I've had some really good experience. I taught at the police academy, and I've done that a lot. But I teach at the police academy. I teach the de-escalation stuff for the police and the procedural justice. And I kind of want to touch on the procedural justice piece because that's kind of the lens that I am mandating our office to use. And the procedural justice pillars are basically there's four pillars that run procedural justice, and that's voice, which means that I'm here to listen. I want to hear what my community members have to say. I want to hear what their issues are. I want to hear what their suggestions are of how we can attack our epidemic. Then the other one is impartiality, where when we respond to incidents or deliver resources, that it's from an impartial standpoint, that we're not picking favorites. The other pillar is fairness, where we treat everybody fairly. Whenever we respond or offer resources, that it's fair, that if you give to one, you give to the other, and people are treated the same. And then the last pillar is transparency, which is sometimes the hardest, where you share what is going on and as best you can. And I say that with kind of tongue in cheek, because We do work with law enforcement agencies. Our advisory council includes the Virgin Islands Police Department and Customs and the federal agencies. And, of course, during when things are sensitive, investigatory of nature, those things sort of have to stay confidential and only between law enforcement. But for the most part, how my office is run and the activities that we're doing are going to be very transparent. Anybody can call and ask what I'm doing, where I am, and I'm okay with that. So that those are the successes.
Awesome. That's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that. And as far as challenges are related, do you have any challenges that you've encountered so far? Maybe one or two? And if not, do you foresee any challenges in the future based off of the things that you're doing?
Well, some of the challenges are is that certainly people are skeptical about the office. There was the Senate was sort of split in voting for this office in the beginning, long before I even got involved in it. So that wasn't my fight, and I don't really want to spend any time on that because we're about positive moving forward. But so we deal with some the naysayers and it ain't gonna work and it ain't gonna do here and that kind of stuff. And even one of my students at St. Thomas, she was like, Virgin Islanders are hard headed. They ain't changing their mind. And then I was kind of disappointed at her response, but at the same time, she was speaking from her heart, and I had to respect her opinion. And she was very clear. But I told her, I said, well, I hope by the end of the year that I'm able to change your mind and maybe you'll start changing other people's minds about our opinions of how Virgin Islanders really think. I think in our heart of hearts, I know even the toughest guys out there or the toughest gals out there that are running and gunning don't really want to do that. I mean, they know how dangerous it is, and the sad part is that people are still doing bad stuff, and that is our biggest hurdle. I mean, we had a young man get killed yesterday in St. Croix, and it's just um, I think people don't realize the damage that's done when one loses life or one takes a life. It's like it's like throwing a big stone in a quiet lake, and the ripples just continue. You lose that person, and then the person that did it gets arrested or killed, and then you have two families grieving. You have a mother, brother, or sister, father that are grieving or frustrated, and then that person's friends they've lost, workers, co-workers. It's just and as the Senate pointed out, it's an economic. It becomes an economic threat, and it hurts our tourism dollars, and our economy. It makes people afraid to go out. Makes people leery. So it hurts us all the way around. But more importantly than economic dollars and tourism dollars, I just don't want to see our own people hurt ourselves and hurt each other. I take this job personally because I've been touched by gun violence. Two very special young men that I mentored were killed by gun violence a few years ago here in St. Croix, and so I take this job on not just because I want to do the position, but because it really makes a difference to me if I can make a difference, or if I can influence other people to make a difference, or help other people make a difference. It's where I want to be.
And I'm sorry to hear about that, Mr. Emmanuel, and I know there are many individuals in this community who know someone who has lost their life to gun violence. And like you did mention, it does have a emotional, it has an economic, and it definitely has a social impact on us as a community. Gun reform has been at the forefront of topics this year. Even last week, there were several individuals killed in Chicago and then at Uvalde in Texas. They suffered one of the most catastrophic shootings in recent history at the schools. And, with homicides in our territory, we have a very high rate, and it's higher than many areas in the States. Are there any areas in particular we should be looking at for reform?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're guns come in here two ways. They come in by boat or air, and so people are bringing guns in, and we definitely. I don't want to overstep my boundaries or get out of my lane. So, and remember, we're not a law enforcement officer, but we do work closely with our law enforcement partners. And I'm hoping that the dialogues that we have will lead to some ideas of how to adjust some of our legislation and our laws to sort of tighten up the throat of how guns get in here. And we're also got to be concerned about technology. Some of our laws are going to have to keep up with technology. People are making guns on 3D printers and using bump stocks to make semi-automatic weapons into fully automatic weapons. And then I just got a notice about another little piece of block you can put on a Glock and make it automatic. Those things they outpower the police. They cause catastrophic damage. It's bad enough some of these folks can't shoot anyway, and you wind up hitting innocent bystanders. And if they're leveling off and praying and spraying with an automatic weapon, more people are going to tend to get hurt. So we have to be very mindful of how these implements of destruction come into our territory. And that means working with the Postal Service, VIPA, Customs, more inspections, and I know when I talk about that, some of the business owners get kind of scot. They don't want you to hold up their containers being looked through or searched, but I think that it's just going to have to happen. I mean, I think, yeah, you might be a day late getting some equipment or pieces or partial, but what's happening is when people are making these ghost guns, they're buying the intricate pieces of a weapon that aren't being flagged in mail or carry or checked luggage, and it's getting through. And then when they get the pieces separately, then they assemble the weapon while they're here, and that's how it's happening. And then we got to talk about how people keep their weapons. Are people truly keeping their guns safe in their house? The Virgin Islands Police Department works very hard to screen people that want to have registered weapons in their home, and they come to their house and ensure that they have a working safe to keep the weapon locked up. But sometimes people don't keep the weapon safe. Their house gets burglarized, and the weapon is down on the street. So it's like an octopus of things that have to be taken care of. And I certainly want to have my hands in those things, but I have to be careful of just how far I can stretch my office and its responsibility. I have to respect what law enforcement is doing and honor what they do, as well as look out for the rest of our community.
And that's important what you mentioned about screening items that are coming in, because we don't manufacture guns in the territory. So they have to be coming in from somewhere, whether through the mail or, just making sure individuals are declaring firearms as well when they come into the territory. Lastly, before we wrap up, I wanted to ask, do you think that training, maybe people are being trained improperly on the use of firearms? Do you think there's maybe a psychological factor associated with the use as well, in terms of how people react with their emotions, that should be considered when they have when they're using firearms?
It's funny. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying how young kids don't know how to fight. They bump into each other and they pull a gun and start shooting. And I don't know if there's some truth to that, or maybe there is a lot of truth to it. The fact is that we can only control ourselves, and it's sad that some of the people that are walking our earth have such hair triggers, for lack of better terms, that they just they pop off just on the smallest thing. I just wish that we could be kinder with each other. It's great here. The tourists come here and they say, "Oh my God, everybody's so polite because they let you, drive out into the street off of the parking lot and come in front of me." That's a wonderful thing, but unfortunately, it's not like that everywhere, and it's not like that all the time. There's some folks that as soon as the light turned green, they're beeping on the horn, laying on it, and seeming every in a rush. And then when you take that on personally and you fuss back, and then it escalates. And so I guess my point is that, if everybody could just kind of take a pause and slow down a little bit and try to respect each other, give each other a break, that works out. I have an adage where I say, if every person would, clean their own front yard, take care of their own house, and then the whole neighborhood is going to look a lot better. So we have to just control ourselves and not lose our tempers under small things. I have a breathing exercise where you can, count up to 20 seconds before you react, and de-escalation. So we have to really see how we can control ourselves. Um, the the loss of life is it's unmeasurable, and the pain that I know the families go through, I can't even put my finger on it. But we have a lot of work to do. I think I'm blessed to have been given the opportunity to lead a team that's going to try to make a difference. And I'm hoping to not only work with that team, but work with other people in the community, other government agencies, and hopefully that we can, come together, break down our own silos, and really look at this problem and come up with some decent solutions. I don't have all the answers. Um, the national safe communities doesn't have all the answers, but I think together with the community people, um, other government agencies, that collectively we will come up with some strategies that are going to make a difference.
Thank you for that, Mr. Emmanuel. And we have a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. So, in essence, it takes each person to assist to make sure that we can come to a collaboration to reach the same goal. So, I
Okay.
wanted to thank you again. This was a very important conversation, and we at The Source do hope to check in with you in the months ahead. But before you go, please tell the public how they can help and how they can contact you if they want to be more involved in some of your efforts.
Okay, great. My cell number to gun violence prevention is 340-227-1049. 340-227-1049. I'm willing to take your call. If I don't get it, I will call you back. The other thing we wanted to tell you about is like I said, we work with law enforcement, but and as they say, excuse me, if you see something, say something. We have to stop being afraid of guys, and watching, not being watching people be victims, and just taking their pictures and sharing it and those kinds of things. We have to be more concerned about life. So I want us to really consider that. If you see something, say something.
Exactly. We have to be our brothers keepers and make sure that we're all doing the right thing, because it has a trickle down effect. It doesn't just affect someone directly, it affects us all indirectly as well. So thank you
And
again.
And one more thing before I go, before you go,
Yes.
I there is the element of personal safety too. I think, when we're out and about in the public, I would urge you to be mindful of where you go, how you go. Watch out for your own little patterns that you make. Keep your head on a swivel. Make sure you're paying attention, and that you're safe, and that you are keeping yourself safe, and your loved ones safe. So God bless everyone.
Definitely. Thank you again, Mr. Emmanuel, and I appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, the source. Good evening.
Thank you for joining us this Sunday. We can't wait to catch up with you here next week. Until then, stay safe and stay informed. The Source is online all the time. Keep visiting our sites for around the clock community coverage, and tune in on social for updates at the top of each hour. I'm your host, Adisha Penn. Until next time.